sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Namnukwa, Osinachi, one man, Osinachi, Aquachi, Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Dr. Segun Soetan, if you can hear us, please accept the request to get promoted to be a panelist.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon from me, Dr. Shelton. Please, you can present over this panel before Professor Hakim before he comes. Please, and everybody should unmute and just need one.
Let me do this. So, if you don't mind, you give me a minute. So something is just I think something enters into my eyes. I need to clear that for like a few minutes. So I thought I would go last in the order it was presented on the program. So please, if you don't mind.
Hi, everyone. I want to suggest that while we wait for Dr. Segun Soetan, maybe Ezinne, can you with your review, or what do you think? Please unmute yourself.
I want to go and remove the that are just falling into my eye. Can
You
everyone
say?
hear me? You all hear me?
Yes, we can, except that it is fluctuating.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Sorry, my broadband is it's not as strong as I would love it, but hopefully I should be able to finish speaking before it knocks me out. Good afternoon, Ezinne Ezepue, and live from Germany. And I didn't expect I'll go first, but yes, here we go. All right. So on the book, I see Dr. Onikoyi here, but I don't see the. Is it with us?
No, he's unavailable.
Dr. Tunde is
He's unavailable
your
at the
co-editor
moment.
with us, not yet?
No, he's unavailable.
Cool.
Dr. Taiwo is not available.
Okay, that's all right. So I think it would be in order to start by saying congratulations on the book. It's one of the things that needed to be done in the industry, especially considering the amount of work certain filmmakers have done and their contribution to the industry and setting the pace more or less. And I think you both started with the right person. Content in the person of Tunde Kelani. He's an amazing filmmaker. I love his films, even though I've always felt like they are more edutainment than any other thing. So whenever I sit to his films, what I'm sitting lecture. It feels like I'm going through a class in a form of film, but it's always very enriching. And I love the fact that he's always, putting for the Yoruba ideology, almost like marketing it and promoting it. And there's something that Kunle Afolayan has also taken up, and they are doing fantastic. So I did like the concept of the book. I like the way you try to separate them into sections, and that way it becomes easier to flow from one was a sort of ordered, sort of place the chapters in a particular order that it becomes easy to read one section and then take a new thought into another section. I did especially like and this is not to say that I didn't like all of the chapters, but I think the chapters that I really found very fantastic and sort of spoke to me in a different way, probably because of the research I am into right now about African storytelling. I loved very much the chapter there's a second chapter by Deborah Klein on issue. And actually, I think that my take from that chapter is almost like a question. And while I was reading through the chapter, this question of semantics kept running through my head. I know as she spoke about alternative narrative. And that also kept me wondering, why do we always try to name things? The naming thing in Africa in general, not just in the cinema, but in almost everything about Africa, that we tend to like name them. And then in the naming, it seems to appear as though we are trying to separate Africa, the African version of everything, or rather mirror the African version of everything against the Western. And that way in the naming, there seems to be a separation from one from the other. And they don't sort of, we don't name them in such a way that they exist in parallel, but one exists below the other. So when I was reading alternative, I read it as one being a of the other. And in recent times, people have been questioning even, namings like the sub-Sahara Africa. And then people are asking, why do we have to have that sub underneath? That means it's below the upper part of the northern part of Africa and all that. And that's what actually was going through my head when I read the alternative. And then I linked that to the chapter by Ojebode and Ayo Dabo. And that's, I think, the chapter 5, where they were talking about the masculine name and how Kelani's films promoted masculinity as revolution for a better Nigeria. And they talked about nicknaming. And then in their discourse, it's almost like you have a first name, and then when you don't live up to the expectations for which you were given that name, you are then given another name. And then in this new naming, you are given a name that sort of mirrors what you do. And then I kind of try to connect it to this alternative, or the alternative that's sort of naming the things that we have in Africa. And then I said, is it that we do not realize that there's a possibility that these things existed first, even before the Western? Or is it because the Westerners sort of then knew or gave a name to theirs, and then when they realized that this existed in Africa, then it becomes like one that is existing after theirs already started existing. But there's a possibility that they actually existed differently at the same time in different climes, just that we didn't. But actually, that kept me at it kept going through my head, and I really would like the authors. I wish they were here. I hope they are here. Or to alternative and the naming thing in general. I also liked the Eshu, the Orita, and the Yoruba. Very foreign. It sounded very colonialist in a sense, that sort of brought back that in a world colonized, anything it will become very sensitive, or rather oversensitive about, you know, the names you give to certain things. But when they are very cultural, like Eshu or Rita, yeah, it sounds very okay to us. But then when it becomes English or in westernized, it becomes sort of problematic. But that aside, I totally enjoyed work on the representation of women. And that's also, again, because I have been working on the representation of women in films, and sort of I spoke with her, and then it's more like something she did a long time ago. Yes, there's a lot of there, but it's really contemporary to look at how things are changing in the industry from the representation that we've always seen about women, especially how the books have spoken about pre-colonial women and how strong they are and how independent they are, until when women started losing their voice because of colonialism, the post-colonial times, when men started defining their sort of ideals for women, what sort of personalities they want the women to be. And right now, things are also changing in the sense that we have females in the industry who are beginning to say, this used to be our mothers, all right, but we are different, or rather these personalities we are seeing in film is just an aspect of who we are as women. There are other things that we want to be recognized by, and things that are already, these things are already really reflected in our films. I do like the way she explored the films that Kelani made, but I wanted her to be here to talk more about the women's genre. I don't know if that is completely a new thing, but I to speak on Kelani's films in particular. Women's genre has always been in existence. It's just that maybe it hasn't been given a lot of prominence in terms of study, in terms of scholars trying to analyze, figure them out in our films. And I liked what she did with Kunla for Lions, the Campus Lady, Mami, and the rest of his films that had very strong female characters. And also colonial motherhood, and the rest of them. There are so many articles that were so amazing. Like you just feel like they are really not just contemporary and not just focusing on one particular filmmaker and his works and glorifying him, putting him in the place where he's supposed to occupy. There's something amazing and fantastic that it's done by Africans as well. It's a volume put together. It's high time we as Africans began to, celebrate our own, tell our own stories, talk from the perspective, the ethnographic perspective, so that at the end of the day, we know when we hand down these things to the classroom, we know that there is nothing to be scared about in terms of misrepresentation due to lack of understanding or lack of knowing the cultural, due to cultural differences and all of those. I found something really that I'd like to bring to the attention of the editors. Unfortunately, it's too late to actually correct that, but I don't know how you want to appease this person. But there is a misspelling of Chris Obirapo's name. I saw that and I cringed because this guy doesn't like to make any mistake about his name. Chris Obirapo, I can't remember the page exactly, but I think he was just mentioned. It was in the introduction. So yeah, Dr. Tunde, you're in trouble. I don't know how this can be done, unfortunately, but however you want to remedy it, but I think I should bring it to your attention. But other than that, I really, really loved this collection, and it's something that is really worth putting into the classroom, and I would recommend that it becomes available in Nigeria. Please, I know that it was published by Cambridge, but please, I hope it's going to be available in our classes. We're tired of using Western textbooks to teach film. We need to begin to use, this sort of text, bring them to the classroom, and then, this should also inspire further studies in terms of African storytelling and African filmmaking. Thank you so much and congratulations to you.
Thank you so much, Ezine. Is Dr. Shuaito here now?
Sure, Dr. Shuaito is here, so hopefully,
okay.
Yeah. Is it my turn to go?
No. I wanted you to take over as the panel chair.
Oh, I see. So I thought, oh, sorry. So my bad. I was thinking you wanted me to have my turn the other time you called me. For a reason, I was preparing and I came here and something flew inside my eye. So
Wow.
the Unico use, I think they did something. I don't know what they did. So,
The village people.
Yeah, so.
We were trying to wake you up in the US.
Okay, I think I'm supposed to go next by the order of the program.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let me see. By the order of the program. So yeah, okay. So we have the discussants. Ezine Ezepue, University of Nigeria. Correct me if I mispronounce the last name. And then the second speaker will be Folakemi Ogungbe Owolabi from the National Institute, JAWS. And then that will be followed by Dr. Tolulope Ibikunle, National Institute for Nigerian Languages, ABBA. And then Conor Ryan, University of Bristol, and lastly, myself. So we stick to that arrangement. So thank you, Ezine, for that wonderful presentation. So it's time for us to call on Folakemi Ogungbe, so as he presents his review of the book we are here to talk about today. And that is The Cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Theatricalities, and Visual Performance, edited by two wonderful scholars, Babatunde Onekoyi and Taiwo Afolabi, published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing in the year 2021. Folakemi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shuaito. I'm so excited to be here for obvious reasons. I mean, Tunde Onekoyi has been my friend since 1997 when we were undergraduates at the University of Ibadan. And I'm totally excited to be here. And I have to let out a secret. Tunde has been fascinated by Tunde Kelani for as far back as I know. I mean, back in the undergraduate days, Tunde was talking to you about post-coloniality, or he was talking to you about Caribbean literature, or he was talking to you about Tunde Kelani. I mean, and interestingly, shortly before we came into school and right while we're in school, so many of these blockbusters were made. I mean, Soluwanile in 1993, Ayoni Mofe in 1994, Koshegbe 1995, and then Oleku was made in 1997 when we were just coming in as freshers. And it was shot at the University of Ibadan. So it was a very exciting time. We have some of our seniors like Pauline Dike playing Lola, Femi Fasoba playing the fake priest, and on like that. So the conversation had been coming up a long time ago, and it's so exciting, it's so interesting. And this brings me to talk about Tunde Kelani as a filmmaker. He's always fascinated with the academy. He's always using the academy for his scripts, acting. You know, we've had people like Dr. Peter Fatomilola, Dr. Kola Oyewo, Adebayo Faleti, Professor Akiwumi Shola. You know, the list is endless. And it looks like the hand of fellowship that he has extended to the people in the academy has also been extended back to him, because I think it's probably one of the most research filmmakers that we have in Nigeria. And this is so exciting. And Dr. Segun Shuaito, remember yesterday when we were talking about filmmakers not wanting to listen? Tunde Kelani is just in the world of his own, because he's ready for feedback from the academy. And, you know, it's a marriage of town and gown, and it's very exciting. Having said that, I'll go quickly to the book review that we have. And the book, as we know, is divided into 4 parts: cosmology and culture, communication, health and archival studies, dance, worlding, text and genre, and then the filmmaker's reflections, which I found very, very interesting, because Tunde Kelani is not just a filmmaker, he's also engaged in scholarly writing. And you know, all the chapters in each of the parts of the book, you know, meet at an intersection, and that is that Tunde Kelani is truly the Orita of the Nigerian cinema. What is the Orita? That is a path where crossroad where, three or more paths meet. So now what happens at the Orita? The people that have gone to hawk all day meet there, to stop. There's buying and selling. You can meet up with a friend, there's socialization. So Orita is like a mix of banter and business. Also, if you are a stranger, you could be confused at an Orita. So it is not for the uninitiated or uninitiated. And that's what I want to say about the book as well. Now, the essays in this book, like the Orita, point in different directions. There's gender, there's law, nomastics, dance, science and medicine, as well as African studies, textual studies, history and language. But they all meet at the same Orita, which is the fact that Tunde Kelani has pioneered the decolonization of the cinema in Nigeria and an espoused cinema with a conscience in the mind of the people. This phrase originated from Wole Soyinka while he was describing Tunde Kelani's film. And according to Klein, it has been borrowed by many scholars and critics. I'll then proceed to discussions in the book. I'll start from the foreword by Sheila Petty. I hope I'm getting the word correctly. She states that Tunde Kelani uses indigenous language in storytelling. Tunde Kelani does this unapologetic, as I would recall 2 encounters that I had with him. On both occasions, he told me that his preferred language of expression is the Yoruba language. Now, the first encounter was an interview that I conducted with him in 2018, where he told me that he felt that films made in English may have a wider reach, but he particularly loved making film in Yoruba. By the second encounter in 2022, I think it was last month or so, this time around he had made his film Ayinla, and he stated that he was surprised that even the non-Yoruba speaking audience thoroughly enjoyed the film, and was excited that an indigenous language film did well at mainstream cinema. And on the Netflix platform as well, and won several international awards. I think this has also paved way for indigenous language films like Femi Adebayo's King of Thieves, which was made this year, which has made over 300 million naira at the box office. That's exciting. Onikoye and Afolabi in their introduction state that Tunde Kelani is Orita personified. They use Orita as a trope and note that Kelani bridges the gap between the celluloid era and the video era. Kelani is always willing to collaborate with keen filmmakers, eager to work with him. This statement is reinforced by Kelani in his essay, The Fusion of the Nigerian Creative Industries, in the later part of the book, where he challenges filmmakers not to do solo work, but to explore film as a truly collaborative art. He charges filmmakers to work with musicians, photographers, literary writers, and so on, as there is a need, and a lot of benefits in creative collaboration that could emanate from such. I'm told I have 2 more minutes to go. Wow, I have a lot to say. Well, let me state this, that Kelani's work is like a rich dish of vegetable salad. He experiments with multiple forms and creates a new art form that has a variety of the old art forms fused into one, but retaining their very old essence. It gives you a new experience, but the old is not taken away from you. So there's so many aspects of the book I'd love to talk about, maybe during the question and answer sessions. So I'll probably be rounding up now. Wow. I have a lot to say. Okay, in all, the essays in this book, individually and collectively, are like the Orita, the man whose work formed the nucleus of this book. He has been to a son, as we know, to earliest filmmakers, and is now a father to the new generation in the cyclical African worlds of Wole Soyinka, literature and the African world. And lastly, there's one important point I think I need to make. When Tunde Kelani was talking about his paper, The Place of Indigenous Film in a Nation Rattled by Violence, there's one important statement he made. There's one thing I got from it. I mean, Tunde Kelani told me that he's a Muslim, a practicing Muslim, but his works are indicative of this crusade for in Nigeria, where people are not only left to practice whatever religion they believe in without fear of judgment, but are people of one religion are passive participants in the other religions, which is the genuine sign of tolerance. I think I will stop now. If there is opportunity to go back on some of the things I'd like to talk about, I'll do that later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Folakemi Ogungbe. Sorry, let me apologize here that our chair, Tunji Assis, is not here, and we did not start this panel in the proper ritual of introducing a panel. So this is a book review on an important book that has been written on one of the greatest African filmmaker, and I think it is proper that we begin that ritual by that salutary introduction of the book itself, but we missed that portion because the chair did not show up. So I'm kind of an impromptu, an interim chair. So, and in that capacity, please, I take your I crave your indulgence that it's proper that we talk about the one of the co-editors that is here and also properly introduce the book we are reviewing today. The book that we are reviewing today is titled The Cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Theatricality, and Visual Performance, edited by Babatunde Onikoye and Taiwo Afolabi. Like I've said earlier, these are one of the the finest, the two scholars are among the finest scholars of African visual studies and cultural studies and film criticism. So the book itself, so we are still going to be talking a lot about that, but the book is a compendium of knowledge and also a fascinating, if you may call it that way, a fascinating monograph written to showcase the cinematic art of Tunde Kelani and his place and position in African cinema, not only Nigerian cinema, but thinking through his work in the sense of African filmmaking and global cinematic practice. Tunde Onikoye, who is here today and who is going to be responding to our questions, is one of the two editors. Tunde Onikoye is a researcher in the Department of Film, University of Regina in Canada, so where he's currently researching transnational African filmmaking and also co-teaching Africa and Arab cinema. He's a member of the advisory board of the Humanities Research Institute, University of Regina in Canada. Onikoye has taught African cinema, drama, and postcolonial studies at Kwara State University and Elisade University, also at Adeleke University in Nigeria. Onikoye was also a member of the advisory board of the Africa International Film Festival from 2018 to 2019. He's also a member of the editorial board of African Studies Review, the flagship journal of African Studies, where he acts as a special edition editor. He is currently on the editorial board of the Journal of African Cinemas and Diasporic Studies. He is a renowned reviewer, a renowned scholar, and Tunde Onikoye, who co-edited along with Taiwo Afolabi the book volume titled The Cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Theatricalities, and Visual Performance, is currently co-editing another book entitled The City of Lagos in New Nollywood, Poetics, Culture, and Metropolitan Aesthetics under the watchful eyes of Duke University. In the past, we will say ladies and gentlemen, but now let me just say everyone. So please welcome with me to this special occasion of a book review, Dr. Babatunde Onikoye. Thank you. So having eulogized the editor, unfortunately, Taiwo Afolabi is not here, so we save time with that. Let me quickly move on to call on Tolulope Ibikunle of the National Institute for Nigerian Languages, ABA, to deliver his review of the book. Bear in mind, we all have 8 minutes each, so this is a review, so we can, we can talk about the book more during the Q&A session, but initially we are all going to have 8 minutes. So Ezinne got away with that, so because we are not keeping time, so Alok today. So all right, so so it is time for Tolulope Ibikunle, and your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sherta. I must say a big congratulations to the editors and contributors for these profound contributions to scholarship. Through this brilliant piece of scholarly engagements on Nollywood in general and Tunde Kelani in particular? Well, it is a known fact, which this beautiful edition also acknowledged, that there has been several scholarly engagements on Nollywood and on Tunde Kelani in particular. These scholars, they've examined TK portrayal of sociocultural, economic realities of Yoruba society from the philosophical perspective, historical, religious, and political perspective. So regardless of this branded literature actually on TK by the likes of Jonathan Ains, Onokome Okome, Afolayan Soetan, Onikoyi, Aderito, and Ibikule, and several others, this edition, as an addition to this scholarly engagements, is definitely not redundant, but of utmost importance to the expansion of scholarship in Nigerian cinema in general and Yoruba film in particular. And I must say, I enjoyed every part of the chapters of this edition, and from the introduction to the sequential arrangements of the chapters, I really enjoyed everything. Now, I want to give my opinion on the book. I must say the book is quite distinct, probably because of my several interactions with different publications on Nollywood and TK in particular. The 6 parts connect freely through these 14 chapters to address core aspects of TK's artistry. And it is evident that this edition certainly will initiate more scholarly pathways. I wish to engage the book from the angle of its iconizing Kelani as the orator of the Nigerian cinema in the introduction and the issue of the Nigerian cinema in chapter 1. Let me remind us here that TK has already iconized himself from the inception of his artistry as the Opomlero, which means the pillar, the flag bearer, and the mainframe. Kindly indulge me a little to abstractly use semiotics to interact a little with the icons mentioned, just like the editor explained in the introduction of the book. The phenomenon of Orita in Yoruba cosmology is a complex one to unravel, hence the adoption of different literatures to interrogate the concept of Orita and then connect to Kelani's personality and artistry. Therefore, I will love to interact with the use of Opomlero, Orita, and issue as an icon for TK. While exploring signification, Ogundeji identifies 3 modes of signification by the type of relationship between the signifier and the signified. And hence, he identified the iconic, the indexical, and the symbolic modes. While defining iconic signification, Ogundeji explains that the relationship between the signifier and the signified is based on similarity and fitness. And the key point I'm holding on to in Ogundeji's explanation is the similarity and the fitness, which involves the similarity between TK and the icons and how TK fits perfectly into the description of the icons. Now, Opomlero, which is a pillar, a support, a tower of strength, a leading light, and the backbone. And again, I'm holding on to mainframe. Mainframe in science, and by science I mean computer, is a central process unit and primary memory of a computer. This has always been Kelani's symbol since the inception of his production company, and that is evident in the introduction of all his movies. Mainframe production, when Tunde Kelani presents any of these movies, the first thing you see is mainframe production. Opomlero presents, Shawarede presents, Oleku presents. You just hear that mainframe production, Opomlero, and also his film institute, which is Mainframe Film and Media Institute. He obviously sets this goal from the inception of his artistry. He ventures into filmmaking with the aim of being a flag bearer, not only to film industry, but also to everything Yoruba, by upholding the cultural values and language. And so far, with my interaction with TK and several literature on TK, he has always been consistent with his vision to the best of his ability. And I am happy that this edition incorporates this core aspect of TK. Now the Orita, a point where a good number of street meet. And it is a fact that, as pointed out in the edition, that Tunde Kelani embodies the Orita configuration with the wealth of his experience as a storyteller, the cultural producer, a teacher. This is because of how he usually embraces every available, everybody, from the artists to dramatists, playwrights, scholars, and anyone interested in connecting with him on any and every grant he's familiar with. During one of my several conversations with Tunde Kelani, I observed that he derives so much pleasure in educating the younger ones, including young filmmakers, to help them have a professional competence and give them their artistry a strong depth. He obviously founded his institute, his film institute, on this passion. And the Orita, it connects his students to different professional sources who are authorities in their areas and specialization in filmmaking. From Nidia Koni to Rockway, when Lamurita Lasule, Tunji Aziz, Kunle Afolayan, he interacts, he connects his students to all these brilliant sources. And as a scholar, TK has connected me personally to several philosophical, religious, social, and all sort of intellectual sources to help my scholarship, which makes me to want to talk about his academic interventions. Kelani, consistency and authority, eloquence and articulation at international conferences and even local conferences, workshops, colloquiums, seminars are second to none. I have met him at several conferences, from Toyin Falola conference to Fagunwa conference to Atonda conference. Kelani is always there. And several other functions that promote Yoruba culture and language. And this brings me to, okay, Dr. Sheto said my time is up, but please, I just have one more slide. Just let me conclude. And in a way or two, we have all benefited from TK academically or personally. And my question now is, what is it benefiting from us? Is it benefiting enough as much as we are benefiting from him? And again, how do we rectify this constant oversight in giving back to the Opomlero, to our Orita, to our issue? This is not peculiar to TK alone, but other filmmakers. I'm just particular about TK because he has sacrificed almost all he had to filmmaking, to archiving our cultural heritage and also providing us with highly researchable content. Then how do we encourage more researchable film production in Nigeria? How do we come together to put enough echo on this issue, to sustain these artistic deities, to encourage having more Orita and issue, to carry on with the beautiful works of our dearly grand Opomlero and Orita? And so on this note, I say a big thank you to LSA and the platform, the editor and the contributor. Beautiful work, thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. Sheto, for taking it.
No, you're fine, you're fine. We'll find that time. Thank you. So not too bad. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ibikunle, for your wonderful presentation. So now it's time for us to hear from another wonderful scholar who is here to also do justice to the review of the book, The Cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Criticalities, and Visual Performance, edited by Babatunde Oníkòyí and Taiwo Afolabi. Let me call on Conor Ryan, University of Bristol. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I should begin, as we all have and as we all should, with congratulating Dr. Oníkòyí and Dr. Afolabi for the release of a project that I know has been a long time in the making, Tunde. And I will say that I, for one, am very happy to welcome it into the world. So congratulations, and I really do look forward to seeing how it creates a ripple effect and how it it makes its way into these conversations that we are continually having about TK, who also very much deserves this attention. I find that my comments about the collection resonate and echo with the comments that have already been made by Dr. Ezekwe, Dr. Ogungbe, and Dr. Ibikunle. So I apologize a bit for any repetition, apologies, but these really do appear to be the strengths of this collection, I think. You know, one thing to say first and foremost is that it's a really impressive range of subject material that's covered. The contributors discover and they unravel for the reader a number of threads within the broad fabric of Kalani's work. The range of intellectual engagement is impressive, including the sexual politics of Thunderbolt and Shawaride, the literary significance of names or onomastics, a word I'm now going to have to look further into, and those relationships between names and masculinity in Shawaride, the representation of motherhood in Mami, the hybridity of choreography in the dance sequences that we can find throughout Kalani's works, and also the aesthetic formation of a moral perspective in Kalani's work that guides viewers to contemplate a more balanced present and future. So I'm struck, as I'm trying to say, I'm struck by this wide range of topics that Kalani's cinema opens up for intellectual reflection and debate. And so, as with the others, I find it tremendously apt that this metaphor of the Orita has been introduced. Thinking of Kalani's cinema as a space for a variety of events to unfold. I would, in the Q&A, really love to know, you know, the kind of deeper significance and why the editors chose not to go with Crossroads, a somewhat more familiar metaphor, and instead have thought of the Orita in a different sense as a space, which I think actually is a really very productive way of thinking of his body of works, Kalani's body of works. So with that said, this appreciation of this wide range of subjects that have been taken up here, I wanted to point to maybe a couple patterns that I saw happening across the chapters. You know, one is, of course, the celebration of Kalani's valorization of Yoruba language and culture and cosmology. So I'm just going to set that one aside because that seems to be a consistent pattern with writing about Kalani, and it should be. The other patterns I wanted to point to is interesting. It's the centrality of Shawaride in this collection and in the discussion of Kalani's cinema. I looked through, and of the 11 academic essays, so Kalani's essays aside, preface aside, of the 11 academic essays, 8 do not simply mention Shawaride, but involve a very substantial engagement with that film. So having observed that, I offer this not as, of course, a criticism, but as an observation, one that sparked, at least in me, an interest in knowing why Shawaride enjoys this prominent position in Kalani's body of work. I wonder, and would love to know Tunde's thoughts on this, I wonder if it owes, or to what extent it owes, to the film's allegorical engagement with political events, which perhaps we don't find as much or as much as we would like in other films by other filmmakers. And whether this attention around the film suggests that there's a strong intellectual appetite for more Nigerian films that speak openly and thoughtfully about governance in Nigeria. So the centrality of Shawaride in our academic conversations and discourse around Kalani's work is one pattern. The second pattern I noticed and was pleasantly surprised to find was the degree to which the essays focused on gender. This focus on gender across the collection represents kind of another intriguing pattern. The essays by Catherine Olutoyin Williams, Kenneth Harrow, Ayokumi Ojebode, and Sunday Ayodabo all touch on gender in substantial ways. But of course, there is an entire section that's dedicated to gender and genre. In this section, Elizabeth Olayiwola directs our attention to the fact that, quote, negative stereotypes of womanhood permeate most of Nollywood's productions, end quote. And she goes on to consider, as counterpoint, whether an evolution in representations of women can be discerned in Kalani's cinema over time. So she works chronologically from Shawaride and Agogo Ewo through Campus Queen, Narrow Path, Aruba, and finally Mami, in order to offer a rigorous account of this heroine figure in Kalani's films. I thought that was absolutely, fascinating to think historically in that way and about change of representation throughout his films. Similarly, in his essay, Cornelius Eze Onyekaba reminds us that in contrast to the figure of the mother in mainstream video films, which is too often a maligned figure of greed or distrust toward in-laws or a figure of uncompromising authority, instead, Kalani, quote, chooses to elevate womanhood using Mami as a pivot whereby women are shown to be committed to building a better society, end quote. I'm not sure what this pattern and the extent to which gender was a part of so many of these essays says either about Kalani's work or about our approach or our entry into that space of the Orita and what paths seem to be before us, or at least seem to be of most interest to us at this moment. But I wanted to simply offer these observations for us to consider. The last thing I wanted to really emphasize about the strengths of this collection was that it offers an exceptional gift in the form of bundling together several essays by Kalani himself. I find especially compelling the decision by the editors to include Kalani's voice speaking about his own works and his own philosophy and approach to filmmaking, which we learn is full of choice wisdom, but also tremendously expansive. I agree with the editors when Onikoyi and Afolabi write in their introduction that TK, quote, exhibits a certain inner glow as a film father figure to those who wish to learn from him or aspire to be part of his projects. When I read this, it's just struck me that it made me realize this is a quality in TK that is often not remarked on. And yet, as soon as you pointed it out, I thought to myself how true this is and how it deserves more estimation because the role of bringing others into and including them in the fold is tremendously important to the further development of the industry and the personal development of individuals. As others maybe have also experienced, I feel as if TK, you're right, Dr. Ibikunle, he gives and gives and gives. And I feel I owe him a debt that I will never be able to pay back. And that is part of that quality in TK of bringing others into the fold. But then I turned to one of Kalani's own essays, and I realized that is so much part of his own vision of what cinema is. In his essay, Fusion of Nigeria's Creative Industries, he makes really abundantly clear how important this is to him. He lays out his philosophy of cinema as a collaborative art. The collaboration is not simply of professional film.
Ryan, sorry if I may cut in. So the time is up already. So please prepare to round up. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. One final sentence here. It's that his notion of collaboration is not simply of film professionals coming together, but a whole synthesis of Nigerian cultural arts, from literature and dance to theater and music. To quote Kalani, as filmmakers, what is required of us is the ability to identify good writers, good actors, good dancers, good musicians, and to be able to make them work together, contributing their diverse skills. In closing, again, I say that this collection really what strikes me is the expansiveness of Kalani's own philosophy and also that space of the Orita that allows us to think more about his work. Yeah, thank you so much and congratulations to the authors.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, yeah, thank you. So please, how do you time the timekeeper now? So how do you time the timekeeper? It's my turn to go. And sorry, so let me, okay, so time starts now. All right,
we'll cut your time to 4 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so once again, so let me quickly say congratulations to the editor. So, and I'm going to jump straight at my paper. So we gather here today to perform a statutory academic ritual that attests to the rigor of knowledge creation and epistemological foundation, which for me, we are in a celebratory mood as we review the latest and the only monograph on a quintessential filmmaker, Tunde Kelani, who is popularly known as TK. TK is to Nollywood what Clint Eastwood is to Hollywood. He is the Martin Scorsese of the Nigerian cinema, a Tinkerman and a Bracolio. The book that we are reviewing today celebrates a milestone in the history of Nollywood as a field of study and family positions Kelani at the center of Nollywood scholarship. In the cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Practicality and Visual Performance, published in 2021, Babatunde Onikoyi and Taiwo Afolabi as editors poignantly provide the critical foundation for reading the films of Kelani beyond the narrow anthropological and dogmatic base on which they originally depended. The production of the book I claim here is a response to the clarion call that Kenneth Harrow made in the book Post-Colonial African Cinema, From Political Engagement to Postmodernism, 2007. Harrow in the book submits thus, and I quote, "It is time for a revolution in African film criticism, a revolution against the old tired formulas deployed in justification of filmmaking practices that have not sustainably changed in 40 years. Time for new voices and new paradigm," end of quote. The cinema of Tunde Kelani, Aesthetics, Practicality and Visual Performance represent the paradigm shift that Harrow foretells by breaking away from the normative readings of established Nollywood directors. The book's uniqueness is that it stirs up debates on Nollywood epistemology and Kelani's creative universe. Woven together like the tapestry of an ancient Egungun costume, it considers the disciplines and the worldviews that TK expresses in his films. The book is divided into 6 parts with 14 chapters in all. Part 1 addresses issue of cosmology, cultural mimesis, and traditional practices. Part 2 focuses on communication, health, archival issues, and the materiality of identity creation. Part 3 establishes linkages between text and intertext, especially the unique ways Kelani's films provide cultural materialist intervention to the study of Nollywood. In Part 4, the authors engage critically with the shifting gender terrain that Kelani represents in his films and juxtapose the representations of women in Nigerian cinema. Part 5 underscores the representation of the law and active criticism, while Part 6 extrapolates Kelani's reflections on his own art, the collective patrimony of African subjects, and his comments on the roles of art in nation building, especially in a failing state like Nigeria. The chapters provide critical linkage and coverage of Kelani's authorial prowess and creative essence. They provide new ways of interpreting the sociocultural ideas and political aesthetics that Kelani inserts in his films to teach his local and global audience certain African values and morals he holds dear, which Akande Shakon refers to as the aesthetics of exploitation. The book also brings up particular hermeneutics and thematic preoccupations that have generated scholastic contentions in Nollywood studies, terms like modernity and cultural sovereignty, gender and misrepresentation of women. Another significant contribution of the book to Nollywood scholarship is that it provides a compendium of articles for Kelanis to explore, study, and scrutinize. While there have been initial attempts to critically document the cinematic art of Tunde Kelani, such as the special edition on the Journal of African Cultural Studies, co-edited by Adesina Afolayan and James Yeku, this is the first time we have a whole book, 14 essays on TK, the orator and issue of Nigerian film industry. Conor Ryan mentioned that, and that speaks to the significance of the book. Furthermore, it's a significant achievement for a burgeoning film tradition like Nollywood and a right step in the right direction for authorist criticism. But since I do not have the luxury of time, let me at this point engage in a bit of theorization of TK as the orator of the Nigerian cinema. Both Onikoyi and Afolabi regard TK as orator of Nigerian cinema, a term they deploy to think through his art, both in terms of the interregnum of technological shift and the worldling of the Nigerian post-colonial state. Their articulation implicates in quote, cultural sovereignty and global neoliberal capitalism that shapes Kelani's artistic prowess. Both editors said, and I quote, Orita represents a space for a variety of events. Incidentally, the Orita is a trope, a feasible, conspicuous space where people negotiate the right path upon their arrival at the space in question, end of quote. Here, the editors locate Orita, the crossroads, as a space where events happen and where people meet and disperse. And to that, both Onikoye and Afolabi writes again, and I quote, we know not only do pedestrians meet at Orita to engage in discussions, meetings, dialogue, conversation, or even trade in different forms, but they also employ such an arena to facilitate movements towards another direction, end of quote. Now, having conceptualized the Orita as a space of diversity, that is, a place where different people and destinies converge before they further disperse, I am surprised that both scholars failed to reimagine the Orita as a source of confusion too. A confusion that metaphorizes the historicity of the Nigerian film industry and its present global status. As the Yorubas are wont to say, Ikorita meta tida mo alejo, loosely translated as the crossroad that confuses the stranger. At the crossroad, strangers are confused. They must know the road they intend to take to their proposed destinations. However, if a stranger fails to tread the right path, he or she will miss the road and head for a new destination. The new destination could be a waste of time or a new beginning, depending on the creativity, time, and resources available to the marooned traveler. In essence, the Orita functions beyond the marginal space of meeting and communication. It is also the source of new beginning and endless wandering in the case the traveler chooses the wrong path. Therefore, Orita is a source of creation, I claim, a space that demands critical thinking and clear focus. Orita is ideological, not because it is the habitat of Eshu, the trickster god. You can read more about that when you read Deborah Klein's chapter in the book. But because it requires rational logic to locate the right path. Orita delineates discovery, a disjuncture that precipitates newness, a sort of avant-gardism. Orita makes experimentation possible, and in the case of Tunde Kelani, he has been experimenting with myriad of thematic styles and representational logic ever since he made Toluwa Nile in 1992. Therefore, since Orita also represents confusion, disjunction, then one can proceed to argue that Kelani is also a confusion. A good confusion for that matter. I have a minute more. A good confusion for that matter, if you consider the materiality of his work and the depth of his cinematic creativity. How can a singular filmmaker represent a complete time cycle and cinematic epochs while still shaping them? He is rooted both spatially and temporally. He represents the old, the current, and the new that is to come. His works disrupt normative aesthetics and command ovation from any discerning audience who can tease out the complex artistic appurtenances that define established global film practices. His latest optics on the most outstanding Akpala minstrel and performer, Ayinla Omowura, is a testimonial to the critical exigence required to frame and canonize Tunde Kelani as the most celebrated Nollywood author. As a multi-part filmmaker and the real avant-garde of Nollywood, Kelani belongs to multiple technological modernity and cultural sovereignties. Who could have imagined TK's film on Netflix? And that is the point. His cinematic universe straddles time and period, and it speaks to multiple generations of cinephiles and consumers of African cultural production. So, I conclude. Because of his situatedness as the doyen of the new Nollywood, it is right that the editors henceforth resituate him as, and I quote, the Ogodogo of the Nigerian film industry. I borrowed the name from D.O. Fagunwa's Ogujo Deninu Igbo Rumole. Doing so, we capture the new meanings Kelani's film provide each time one encounters them, and simultaneously center Kelani as a timeless Nigerian filmmaker who deserves continental accolades and global recognition. That being said, what Onikoye and Afolabi have bequeathed to us, the Kelanists and Nollywood scholars, is a rich textual material to begin a new conversation on author criticism and the Nigerian cinema in general. Undoubtedly, the cinema of Tunde Kelani aesthetics, theatricality, and visual performance is a foundational text upon which other scholars can continue to build and expand knowledge frontier. Abomire, here's my return. Thank you all. All right, now the panel will end in 30 minutes. So I've just been told, and then I think we have more minutes. We have time for us to engage in a lot of questioning and also debating what we do best at academic gatherings like this. So the floor is open. So I know Babatunde Onikoyi is here. If you have questions, please post your questions, or you can raise your hands. I will recognize you, and then Babatunde Onikoyi can respond to the questions or clarify some of the issues we'll be raising. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone, and good morning from the city of Regina. I'm still very sleepy, but I'll do my best possible to respond to some of the things that everyone has offered here. I'd like to thank everyone for your very wonderful and profound submissions on TK. The truth of the matter is that we cannot say enough about TK, and I think that it is a gesture that my co-editor and I have decided to offer the world, and indeed Tunde Kelani. It's, the book is like a tribute to everything that he has touched, and we are very happy that this kind of generosity of a panel that LSA is offering us is quite, profound and needed. Well, so many things have actually been said, and I'm going to start particularly from the choice of the Orita. Of course, it is a junction where, a lot of people actually meet to negotiate their future, to discover their creativity, to ask themselves, where else do I want to go? And I think in a certain way, Tunde Kelani particularly epitomizes that paradigm of the Orita. And one of the reasons why we were able to coin and perhaps, theorize the Orita in this way in the introduction is because of all the celluloid practitioners that we have actually encountered in Nigeria. I think Tunde Kelani is the only active and perhaps the only living icon that we are able to engage with. He was there during the celluloid years. He was there after the celluloid years, and he's still very much there. He's still very much present with us. Speaking about giving back to him, as I said, we cannot write enough about TK. It's like writing about Sembene or writing about, Martin Scorsese, who is still very much alive, or maybe the actor, director, Clint Eastwood, and many of them, recently, in March 2022, the University of Regina Department of Film, and of course, the Media Arts and Performance Faculty, did a short tribute to the works and career of Tunde Kelani, where this book was actually first launched. And we also engage, Tunde Kelani in some very, very sensitive and, important issues about his work. And not only that, he also offered us a lecture about the most of the things that he has done, his engagement with African cineasts, academics, and what he's actually doing in Abeokuta today, where he resides, having relocated from Lagos. And then he also offered us, he also did a masterclass with our final year students and postgraduate students here in the University of Regina. So you see, it's an opportunity to give back to TK. It was an idea that Taiwo and I, proposed to the university, and it was so amazing how the university actually received TK. I am also very happy to tell you that in September, the Manitoba Film Festival, the African Film Festival in Manitoba will be taking place between the 23rd and of course the 25th of this month. And it's also nice to also let you know that Tunde Kelani is going to be coming to Canada to give the keynote. And my humble self, I'm going to be, presiding over the symposium that will treat his work and also, discuss the theme of the festival, which is African cinema, cityscape, the city, and filmmakers. So, as I said, we can't do enough. We cannot write enough about TK. And I think, these reasons are actually put together, to allow me to tell you that these are some of the things that we actually looked at in order to, put this collection together. It was really hazardous because we needed to choose some of the finest of the paper. Some of them were actually rejected. Some of them were reconstructed, and just like Conor Ryan also hinted, we deliberately had to ask TK to offer us some of his essays in order to concretize and materialize the entire compendium. What else do I have to say? I connect Ken Harrow's pointer and demand as to what we need to do that needs to be new in African cinema, with that of the profound ideas that had been offered by people like Professor Jonathan Haynes, who is currently being celebrated at this time. One of the things I'm very fascinated by Jonathan Haynes's essay, which is titled "What is to be done." It's a work that I've actually referred and referenced a couple of times, and for several years now. One of the things that Professor Haynes actually proposed was that apart from issues of history, we need to engage with the issue and the criticism of authorship or auteur criticism. And the way I read that from my own perspective is that we need to give these filmmakers the kind of attention that they actually deserve. I know a couple of works have actually been done on Tunde Kelani. I know that people like Shueton have actually written. I think your thesis was actually on TK's authorial status, which of course in Professor Haynes's last book, Nigerian film genres in Hollywood, there is a chapter, I think chapter 5, which is also devoted, very profound work devoted to TK as an auteur. And again, beyond that, it is not just about TK, but also, very important and, very creative directors who are actually doing a lot of work. We need to pay close attention to what they are doing and perhaps subject their works into that, to that authorial response. Anyway.
So if you don't mind, so let me, if I may cut in here. So this is a contribution from Jonathan Haynes. Shawarode deserves the centrality in this volume that Conor Ryan was just pointing to. It's always been my favorite among TK's film because of its direct and daring political intervention, its enormous variety and fullness with which it evokes Yoruba aesthetics. So how do you respond to the centrality of Shawarode in the connection, in the collection rather, and also the question of gender and gender matters, that one of the presenters talked about. So in your moment of decision, so how in a way did you come to arrange the book in such an order, the 6 parts and also the 14 chapters? So what motivates you to kind of think about the sequential arrangement, and how Shawarode becomes, in a way, so this, the center of that particular compendium?
Okay, Segun, you've actually asked me 3 questions and I will see how I could answer them in bits. Yes, I think Professor Haynes is right. And thank you so much, Conor Ryan, for drawing that analogy. But in fairness to the work, I didn't actually think about Shaworide. I didn't actually think about it in that way, but now that you've mentioned it, I think there is something very engaging about the work. You know, it's symbolic affair, it's allegorical presentation, and the fact that it's actually still very relevant in terms of its sociological exigencies. You know, the work actually, you know, allegorizes and parodies the life and times and the dictatorial tendencies of the late General Sani Abacha, who was actually tagged as the greatest and the most dangerous dictator that Africa had ever produced. You know, and the work in itself has that ability to remind us of that period. You know, shortly after the June 12 election was actually annulled. I may not be able to go into some of those stories right now, but then it is a work that actually helps us to think about our politics, even today. I mean, we all know what's actually happening in Nigeria now, and you know, Nigeria is becoming even more dangerous to inhabit at this time. So the work is still very, very important, and it's a work that so many critics would love to engage with. It is still very relevant, and critics would love to write about it. So I am not surprised that a lot of critics in our collection were devoting their times to critiquing it in several ways. I mean, one of the most engaging of the essays for me was Shola Animashaun's work on lore, customary lore, and of course the works of Tunde Kelani. It's a way of shifting the criticism from what we do as film scholars to another area where we think that Tunde Kelani's work engages valuably and finds value and importance. In terms of gender, well, I'm not a gender critic, but one thing I can say is that it is part of the forte of Tunde Kelani to engage with the potentials of women. And in his own way, I think he has actually reflected that in in most of his work. He has actually offered the female species, in quote, that important status to level up, with male species, even much more better. A work like Narrow Path, a work like like Thunderbolt, works like even to the recent Anyala, you see where women actually forge ahead to create a path for themselves, in spite of the masculine agenda or the patriarchal arrangements that have been formed for a long time by men who themselves have actually caused much of the disorder that we have in our own immediate society. So it's a way of telling us that women are already standing up to the occasion to look at the emperor man and tell him that, look, thou indeed that naked, I will strip you of your patriarchal essence. Well, this is just what I have to say, and I think that the work of Elizabeth Olaiwola actually stretches that horizon for us to engage with. Now, to your last question about the sectionalization of the work, it was deliberate, really. We had to unpack the substance of each of these essays, and then we asked ourselves, look, are we just going to put them in chapters? Why don't we contextualize them in groups? And this is why you have what we actually presented here. I'll just take two, if you can just give me that time. For instance, we have a cosmology and culture, and works like Tunde Kelani and the canonization of Yoruba cinema by Stephen Opada, Kelani and the efficacy of African science, a study of Thunderbolt and Shaworide by Catherine Williams, and of course, Deborah Klein, who has been very much around for a long time, Tunde Kelani issue of Nigerian cinema, Yoruba aesthetics, formation, tradition, and morality. I mean, looking at these titles, what comes to mind is the worlding of Yoruba, the plurality of the Yoruba culture and worldview in a world that is constantly in a flux, constantly transforming and all that. I bring to this discussion the work of, one of the most important scholars in the US now, Professor Adeleke Adeopo, that is The Art of Being Yoruba. I mean, the work has actually inspired us a lot. And, we are actually grateful to the tendencies that this work actually emit. What Adeleke has actually done with that work is just what I said now, extending that worlding, extending that worldview to find relevance of the Yoruba people, of the Yoruba worldview, to find relevance in a world that is constantly changing. And again, the last thing that I would say is that one of the things that I think Adeleke Adeopo actually did with that work was to show how popular Nigerians are around the world, in Brazil, in the United States, in London, in Paris, in New York, where they themselves are actually contributing to the economy of these countries and, of course, the culture as well. Thank you, Segun.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have about, excuse me, we have about 12 more minutes to go. So please, panelists, if you have questions, you can post your questions to him, and I'm sure he's going to respond. And then our audience, so if you have questions you want to ask, Babatunde Onikoyi is here to answer your questions. So, but while we are thinking about our questions, so I'd like to, let me ask you this. So, how in your thinking through the arrangement of the book, so do you think the book in a way has the critical advantage, I use the word for lack of a better word right now, so to connect with scholarship, works that have been done before it, like in particular talking about the special edition of the Journal of Cultural Studies, the co-edited edition by Additional Afolayan and James Yeku. So, these are foundational tests too, foundational attempts too. So, are there kind of a kind of symbiotic readings or between your work and the earlier ones, like I mentioned? Please unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Segun, for your question. Well, if you look at the work of, the special issue done by Professor Additional Afolayan, and of course, James Yeku of the University of Kansas, you will notice that as important as the work is, their preference was to look at the works from the point of view of philosophers, which I think was a very, very beautiful thing, which I think was profoundly done, But you see, the only difference that the difference between their work and ours is that we're actually looking beyond, the philosophies of the work of Tunde Kelani in relation to Yoruba worldview and water view. From the title, what we have is the cinema of Tunde Kelani, aesthetic theatricalities and visual performance. In other words, all the essays here have, resonate with visuality, with visual performance, with theatricalities and aesthetics. And a film or a catalog of films are actually works of art, and we need to, address these films from that point of view. Yes, for a long time, critics and scholars have offered us the satisfaction to look at African films, from anthropological leanings, and given the very profound work of Karim Baba. I mean, a lot of people would normally engage with what Karim Baba has done with our popular arts in Africa and how we actually see Nollywood, including the works of Tunde Kelani, as a work of popular art. So I think this is where we actually draw the line between what people like Afolayan and Yeku have done and what we have actually done. You see, there is so much to engage with in our work. You know, we look at film from various, we look at the work of Tunde Kelani from various point of views. And this is what actually marks the work out to be quite exceptional. While we do not claim to say that our book is the best, we know that we have actually devoted our interest to Tunde Kelani alone. And again, the work is a journal. It's not that's Yeku's work and Afolayan's work. It's a journal, which doesn't make it less a beautiful work. Ours is a book, and one of the and actually the first on Tunde Kelani. I know that Ojebode and a few others have actually produced something on Tunde Kelani, but then when you look at the work of Ojebode, that is the camera of conscience, you know, the camera of conscience. If you look at the work, there are some essays there which does not particularly make the work, you know, an essential work devoted to TK.
Please don't forget, we still have about, we have 5 more minutes to go. And if I may pose a question before we finally wrap up this session. So, and this question is just, you know, you may, so within the aesthetics of exhortation that Akadishokon talks about. So, will you be willing to comment on the post-global impact of, using late Tejumola Olaniyan's coinage, post-global, so to think about the works of Tunde Kelani vis-a-vis his latest release, and which is now streaming on Netflix. So when I interviewed Kelani in 2015, and I engaged him like 2 years ago, so he talked about you know, Netflix, Amazon Prime, so these global streaming platforms, and you know, reasons he won't. He gave many reasons he won't have his works, you know, on them. But today we have not only Ayinla Omowura, we also have Daphne Mirage. So within that context of globalization and transnational, you know, filmmaking and consumption, so how will you think, you know, how will you discuss that? So as, you know, the editor of the first monograph on Tunde Kelani.
Well, thank you, Segun. You mentioned something before, the fact that Tunde Kelani would not have his work on Netflix and all these streaming platforms. The truth about it is that the circulation of any African work is very, very important. When I mean circulation now, circulating it around the world, you know, and the grouse that TK actually has or had with most of these platforms was the fact that, you know, most of his works were actually pirated, you know, at a certain time, and where he complained that he lost a lot of, you know, a lot of millions to some of his investments and all that. While we can say that some of these online streamings, online platforms are not safe, I can categorically say that I'm sure that Tunde Kelani right now will have a change of heart and a change of mind, because from what I know, he has not complained so far about the fact that his works have actually been pirated. And again, he has actually realized that if his work needs to go far, he needs to, you know, attend to some of the most secured and universal platforms that are offering this kind of, you know, closed-circuited circulation, which people will have to invest on before they can see his work. And for a man whose works have actually transcended time, space, and that sense of temporality, it is essential that the popularity of TK beyond Africa would need to, you know, enter this arena and horizon of global visibility. And I think this is actually paying well for Ayinla and of course Dazzling Mirage. And from what we can see, Tunde Kelani will consistently take advantage of most of them: Netflix, Amazon, Sundere, etc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tunde Onikoyi. So it's time for us to wrap up this session. It's been a very wonderful time engaging your new book, The Cinema of Tunde Kelani, Theatricalities, Aesthetics, and Visual Performances. So we have 3 more minutes to go. And on that note, so if any one of us will have something to say, let's chip in. Thank you.
Actually, could I jump in quickly on this topic of the platforms, Netflix, Amazon, Kelani's latest releases? Tunde, one of the reasons I really enjoyed that icon, the idea, the trope of the Horita, is how much I came to realize that we call Amazon and Netflix platforms. They don't want to be platforms. They want to be the Horita. They want to be that space where everyone has to come to, right? They want to be, where all of our activity exists. So I just found that really interesting, how you were thinking about the Horita as this space for a variety of events, and how much that captures what they aspire to be and how they want to become, in a way. I mean, this is my take. They want to become the Horita of Nollywood, or the Horita of Nigerian cinema. You have to go there to find it.
And I think that Segun will also connect with that. I mean, look at the way Horita is now being, formally giving that credibility into this plural world horizon. It's a way of trying to tell the world that a lot of good things can actually come from Africa. So it is essential that one needs to engage with it. I'm talking about those, in the West now. I mean, look at what Kunle Afolayan is doing. Yeah. He is consistently, collaborating with everyone, in France, in the US.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have to run now. So I mean, we can. This is one of the disadvantages of virtual conferences. So in the physical face-to-face conference, we can over a cup of teas while we are eating, continue the discussion, but we can't do that right now. So, but then Oluwadare Fakunle quickly ask you a question. So, and please connect with Oluwadare Fakunle. So we can take the question right now. It's about the significance of the book. The question is it to eulogize TK or is it a biographical work? And you can respond to Oluwadare Fakunle, behind the scenes. So, so far so good. It's been a wonderful time we have here today. Conor Ryan, thank you so much. Flakemi Ogungbe, thank you. Ezine Ezekwe, thank you for coming. And Tolulope Bikunle, thank you. And I want to thank Babatunde Onikoyi for responding, and LSA for granting us this platform. So I hope to see you all next time. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.